Hi, I'm Cheryl, and I'm a filmmaker. Nah, I'm not really a filmmaker, but I have a videotaping business with my friend Tamara, and I work at a video store, so I'm working on being a filmmaker. The problem is I don't know what I want to make a film on. I know it has to be about black women because our stories have never been told.
This film essay is on Cheryl Dunye and how her film Watermelon Woman offers an intersectional conversation on gender expression, sexuality, and race. Cheryl Dunye completed this film in 1996. At that time, Watermelon Woman was the first feature film to be directed by a black lesbian woman. Currently, Cheryl Dunye is a professor of cinema at San Francisco State University. She has made over 15 films in her career. Most of them deal with black lesbianism and the importance of personal narrative. Watermelon Woman is a docufiction about a black lesbian filmmaker who embarks on a journey to make a documentary about Faye Richards, a forgotten black actress from the 1940s. Watermelon Woman is mainly about the main character's, quote, search for identity, community, and love, according to Dunye's website. This film won the 1996 Teddy Award, which is given to an outstanding LGBTQ film at the Berlin International Film Festival. Evidently, this film is considered a classic in queer cinema. This is mostly because of the realistic depiction of a black queer woman and her examination of a black female story in cinema history. In this film essay, I'm focused on three themes depicted in Watermelon Woman. The first, the sexuality of the lesbian characters. The second, the importance of black female collaboration. And third, the power of personal indie cinema. The sexuality in the film is seen through two avenues: the overt sexuality of the lesbian couple Diana and Cheryl, and the gender expression of the female characters. This film was infamous for its controversial lesbian sex scene. Upon its release, it was deemed patently offensive and possibly pornographic by Michigan Republican Peter Hofstra, who tried to cut the film's National Endowment funding. But based on scene analysis, the scene is sexually very tame and more emotionally meaningful. There are extreme close-ups of Diana and Cheryl's body. Because of these close-ups, we are seeing sex from the point of view of Cheryl and Diana. Also, there is a focus on their hands. This points to the intimacy between the two women. Because this scene comes from the point of view of the lesbians and focuses on intimacy, not sex, this scene cannot be reduced by the male gaze. It adds a meaning between the two women that operates outside of male pleasure. Cheryl Dunye tells AfterBuzz TV of her motivation behind the sex scene. She says, quote, "Having watched queer cinema up until The Watermelon Woman, there were no brown bodies involved in sex that I could identify with. So me doing it made it happen. And I got many people coming to me like, thank you, that body looked like my body." Secondly, the sexuality in this film is discussed through the gender expression of the main lesbian characters. The femme, the butch, and the baby dyke all appear in this film. According to El Castillo's study, Making Her Invisible, the cultural representations of lesbianism in the lesbian body in the 1990s, we can observe the cultural and visual assignments of lesbians in cinema. First, we have Diana, who is Cheryl's white love interest. She is the femme. The femme lesbian is always a white upper-class woman. Her interest in women, which is a social defiance, is pacified by her feminine, easy appearance. Diana is an example of a lipstick lesbian. She has an attractive, nice smile, light and appealing makeup, a feminine low-cut shirt, and is inviting. In the case of the femme homosexual, her appealing look sanitizes her of her defiance. She can complete the act of unbecoming and shed her lesbian identity. In this case, the femme lesbian is actually a heterosexual woman in disguise.
Remember, I'm black, and the theme song at my prom was Salon by the Commodores.
My boyfriend was black, and he knew all the words.
You had a black boyfriend?
I had two. No, actually, I had three black boyfriends.
What did your parents say?
Nothing. They're liberal hippie types. Actually, my father's sister's first husband was an ex-Panther. His name was Tyrone Washington. What is so funny?
You're such a mess.
What does that mean?
Next is Cheryl. She is classified as a baby dyke, a younger, feminine-appearing lesbian that prefers masculine clothing. Dunye told Lenny Letter that, quote, I was a baby dyke. I think baby dykes were soft, which is a little bit like wanting to be androgynous. With that sort of identity, mind and body play with each other all the time. You had to have character and edge and show that you were a part of a certain community. Her gender expression showed that she was a part of a rebellious, defiant community. This is shown in the scene where Cheryl gets mistaken for a boy and a drug addict by the police.
Our crackhead friends. What are you doing?
Just minding my business.
Mind your business. Boy, don't you know this is private property? Where'd you get that camera?
I'm not a boy, and the camera's mine.
Well, you look like one, you little crackhead freak. Come up with some ID.
I don't have any.
No ID? And possible stolen property?
She gets judged on her race and her gender expression. She breaks societal expectations by both not being white and also not being a feminine woman. She showcases the intersectionality of being a black dyke. There is a danger in being a non-conforming black woman in a patriarchal society. Casillo states that a black lesbian cannot be a femme. This is based on the societal masculinity of Cheryl's black appearance. This is because Cheryl does not accept white femininity. Lastly, we have Tamira. Tamira is the butch. She stands as a foil to Diana, a way for the audience to contrast the femme and the butch. Her looks are more aggressive and lean towards the male image. She is also more butch than Cheryl. She talks of quote-unquote getting some in the same manner as a heterosexual male is expected to.
I'm not listening to you, Cheryl, because we have to go, okay? I promised Stacy that I'd meet her at her house, and I want to get there a little bit early. You know, get us some wine, some flowers. I'm trying to get some tonight.
Also, her anger towards Diana conforms to the masculine identity of aggressiveness and confrontation. She also acts as a social commentator on Diana. She questions Diana's white upper-class status.
I mean, come on, Cheryl. She lives in that big loft all by herself and volunteers at, like, some agency that works with not only poor kids, but poor black kids. What's up with that, Cheryl?
Tamara, you're just so fucked up. You're just so fucked up.
And she reminds the audience that the image of Diana, a liberal, comfortable, attractive white woman, is not one that's not in tune with reality. The importance of black women in this film is highlighted by the film's collaboration. Within the world of the film, Cheryl's best friend is Tamira. She is her support system. She reminds her that the film is Cheryl's project.
And she would love to talk to us about Martha and her life and with us. I thought this was Cheryl's project.
She even helps her with the camera work during her interviews.
I knew this. I don't.
Tell him the name of the woman who directed it.
Watermelon Woman. What was the name again? Martin?
Martha Page. She was a white woman director.
Martha, a woman, huh? Women are not my specialty, I tell you.
Of course they aren't. Look at you.
What was that, Tamara? Cheryl, I have some photo play magazines for you in the basement. I'll get them for you, all right? You can take them with you when you leave.
You can be so rude sometimes.
Tamira's significance in this film is important to the idea of black-female friendship in cinema and the reclaiming of our work. This collaboration also happened in the actual production of the film. In her interview with the Lenny Letter, Dunier states that Valerie Walker, who plays Tamira in the film, and I, from the moment we got together, were just joking all the time. It's important to do that improv, quote. They represent a lesbian relationship that is realistic and non-sexual. Dunier also talks about her cinematographer, Michelle Crenshaw, who was also a black lesbian. They were a team of black artists who came together to create a story that centered around a community that represented marginalized queer people. Dunier tells the Lenny Letter that, quote, Michelle is so powerful. She applied herself to the project before anyone else did. Really, she was the first person on board. She's just that great. She's really underutilized in the sense of her war. Dunier goes on to discuss how Michelle Crenshaw is one of the few cinematographers of color in Hollywood and how difficult it is for her to be in the business. Bell Hooks, in her piece, Theory as a Liberatory Practice, 1991, states that the work by women of color especially if written in a manner that renders it accessible to a broad reading public, even if that work enables and promotes feminist practice, is often delegitimized in academic settings. Dunye's work in Watermelon Woman is devalued by the politicians in the National Endowment of the Arts for that sex scene between Cheryl and Diana. Dunye tells Interview magazine that at the time, quote, "Nobody contacted me. Was sort of like the Watermelon Woman, you know? Talked about, but I didn't have a face. I was just a puppet," end quote. But Bell Hooks goes on to honor the works of Pain and Truth as liberatory. It not only enables us to remember and recover ourselves, but it charges and challenges us to renew our commitment to the active, inclusive feminist struggle. Dunye started this work as a way to speak to the Black lesbian experience. I want to focus on the documentary element of the film and how it intensifies Dunye's idea of personal cinema. On her website, it states that, quote, "Dunye's narratives are peppered with deconstructive elements with the characters directly addressing the camera and making ironic references to the production itself. Dunye's appearance in her films and tapes as quote-unquote herself is to blur the distinctions between fiction and the real life."
Sisters. Yes, sisters. R.E.S. But this has to be documented. I'm sorry. Get it, Annie. Get it all. This is great. I'm so glad we're here.
Aren't you glad we came?
I am so glad we came. Get it all.
Dunye talks about how she wasn't seeing a substantial history of lesbians in cinema. She tells the Los Angeles Times that, quote, "Flip to the history of lesbian and gay cinema. What do you get is women, but not women of color. Somebody existed. During those times, just no one cared. That gave me the chance to say, I want to see somebody like me who existed." One of her inspirations is Michelle Parkerson, who she calls, quote, "the mama of Black lesbian cinema." She is a professor of film and media studies at Temple University. Dunye was especially inspired by her work, A Litany for Survival, The Life and Work of Andre Lorde, 1997. She was inspired by the level of commitment, for it took 10 years to make. Dunye was also inspired by Jim McBride's David Holzman Diary, 1967. It's a docufiction that follows a man who decides to film his life. This classic is experimental and takes a reflective look at how our lives are affected by the camera. I think Cheryl positions this film as a documentary in order to normalize a story about a Black woman and her interests. Dunye tells Real Black TV that, quote, "I wanted to make messages, change lives, engage with the community, create visibility, create agency for people who look like me, and having media that matters." Dunye, by producing a film that makes the audience believe in its characters through the lens of documentary, we are able to relate to Cheryl and her Black lesbian story as a human story. This film, Watermelon Woman, inspired me. When Dunye speaks about her work in cinema, she tends to come from an individualistic perspective. Yes, it is centered around community and agency, but when she speaks, it is mostly about herself and what she wants to make. I identified with her story directly as a Black queer woman. She is at the center of her films because she truly creates from her perspective as a Black queer woman and with that identity alone. I explored the racial and sexual intersections of this film because it allowed me to look at how I create and how I want to create. I think the hardest thing about film is trying to find a voice that you believe is worth sharing. Cheryl Dunye in her film, The Watermelon Woman, gave me an ounce of courage to find my voice and execute it through film. So after all this, what does Cheryl Dunye have to say to new filmmakers like me? Quote, "As for the new Watermelon Woman fans, I want them to understand that more films have to be made, and you guys have to make them. So it really is sort of a kicker. Not that I have to become a Black lesbian filmmaker, I already did. Now who else is doing it? Step up to the plate of your lives, and you're a Watermelon Woman whomever that might be for you, and do it. It's a call for action in that sense, and putting yourself in that picture. I think that's the one thing I want these younger audiences to feel and do." End quote.
I thought it was going to be easy. I thought I was going to be able to use the camera to document my search for Faye, but instead I'm left empty-handed except for this package from June. You know, I wish that neighbor of yours had given me your phone number in the hospital because there are so many things I wanted to ask you face to face. I mean, I know she meant the world to you, but she also meant the world to me, and those worlds are different. But the moment she shared with you, the life she had with Martha on and off the screen, those are precious moments, and nobody can change that. But what she means to me, a 25-year-old black woman, means something else. It means hope, it means inspiration, it means possibility, it means history. And most importantly, what I understand is that I'm going to be the one who says, I am a black lesbian filmmaker who's just beginning, but I'm going to say a lot more and have a lot more work to do. Anyway, what y'all have been waiting for, the biography of the Watermelon Woman.